Harvard professor called it unsolvable. Then a rejected pizza boy solved it overnight. It was just past midnight in Boston, and the streets glistened with rain. The city had quieted, but inside a cramped studio apartment above a noisy pizzeria, 19-year-old Miguel Alvarez sat cross-legged on his mattress, surrounded by pizza boxes, textbooks he could barely afford, and a battered old laptop that buzzed louder than it processed. His fingers were stained with grease and ink, and his eyes burned from hours of staring at equations most would never dream of attempting. But Miguel wasn't most people. And tonight, the world would come to know it. Miguel was no genius, or so he'd been told. He had been rejected from every top university he applied to, including his dream school, Harvard. Born to undocumented immigrants, he had grown up navigating the shadows, never drawing attention, never expecting anything more than survival. By day, he delivered pizzas in the Back Bay. By night, he taught himself math through online courses and borrowed textbooks. It was the only thing that made sense to him in a world that too often didn't. Meanwhile, across the Charles River, in a grand lecture hall at Harvard, Dr. Aldous Finch, a towering figure in mathematical theory, had just announced to his elite seminar that the Eisenstein conundrum was, in his words, fundamentally unsolvable within this generation. His tone was final, like a gavel striking a verdict. Cameras rolled, and the footage went viral. Students applauded the conclusion, content with the mystery being shelved for some distant genius to uncover, someday. But Miguel had watched that video on his phone during a break between deliveries. The name Eisenstein lit a fire in his brain. He'd seen it in one of the discarded textbooks from the MIT recycling bin he scavenged for reading material. Something about the challenge clawed at him. Not because he thought he could solve it, but because someone said it couldn't be done. That night, he skipped sleep. As rain lashed against the windows and sirens echoed in the distance, Miguel scribbled and calculated, erased and rewrote. He didn't eat. He didn't speak. He just thought. Hours passed like minutes. And then, as dawn painted the sky pink and orange, Miguel sat frozen, staring at the mess of numbers and lines on his notebook. He had solved it. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just sat still, trembling, like a person who had accidentally touched something holy. But what do you do when you solve a problem the world considers unsolvable, especially when you're a pizza boy no one listens to? Miguel didn't have a fancy academic email. He didn't even have a printer. But he typed up his findings as best he could, scanned his handwritten proofs with a shaky hand, and emailed them to every math professor he could find, Harvard, MIT, Yale, Stanford. He didn't expect a reply. And for 3 days, he got none. Until the fourth day. Dr. Emily Rao, a quiet but brilliant mathematics professor at MIT, stumbled across Miguel's email late one night while grading papers. She almost deleted it, thinking it spam, but something about the subject line made her open the attachment. 5 pages in, she was sitting upright. 10 pages in, she was pacing. At 15 pages, she woke her husband. By morning, the mathematics department was buzzing. Miguel's proof didn't just approach the Eisenstein conundrum from a new angle, it redefined it. He had done something no one else had dared to do, question the very assumptions the problem was built upon. Within 48 hours, Miguel was invited to present his work at MIT. He showed up in a borrowed jacket 2 sizes too big, with his sneakers still sticky from the kitchen floor. The room was packed. Professors whispered. Students gawked. And then Miguel spoke, nervously, earnestly. He didn't use big words or try to impress. He simply told them what he saw, how he saw it, and why it made sense. When he finished, the room was silent. Then it erupted. Word spread fast. The pizza boy who solved the unsolvable became an overnight sensation. Reporters swarmed his pizzeria. News anchors called him a modern-day Good Will Hunting, though the truth was stranger and more beautiful. Miguel wasn't a secret genius waiting to be discovered. He was just a boy who never gave up believing that his mind mattered, even when the world told him otherwise. Dr. Finch, initially dismissive, was forced to retract his statement, publicly acknowledging Miguel's breakthrough. Harvard offered Miguel a full scholarship. So did Princeton. So did a dozen other institutions. Miguel chose MIT, not because it was the most prestigious, but because Dr. Rao had been the only one to listen. But the story didn't end there. With his newfound platform, Miguel started a foundation called the Quiet Minds Project, aimed at identifying and supporting underprivileged youth with untapped potential. He partnered with libraries, community centers, and shelters, distributing free educational resources, laptops, and mentorship. Genius, he said in one interview, isn't rare. Opportunity is. One day, while speaking at a high school in a struggling neighborhood much like the one he grew up in, a shy girl approached him after his talk. Her eyes were full of wonder and hesitation. She handed him a drawing, not of him, but of numbers floating over a cityscape, shaped into wings. He framed it. Years later, that girl would go on to become a renowned engineer, and she would cite Miguel's visit as the moment she believed her mind had value. Miguel's story spread not because of his mathematical feat, but because of his humanity. He remained humble, always deflecting praise back to the community that shaped him. The single mother who worked 3 jobs, the neighbor who let him borrow Wi-Fi, the pizzeria owner who gave him time to study between deliveries. I solved the problem, he would often say, but kindness solved me. And maybe that's the heart of it. In a world obsessed with accolades, degrees, and titles, it took a pizza boy with grease-stained fingers and a relentless heart to remind us that brilliance is not born in ivory towers. It's everywhere, waiting, hoping, working in silence. And sometimes, all it needs is a little bit of faith, a chance to be heard, and a door held open. Because sometimes, the ones the world overlooks are the ones who can change it. And in Miguel's case, he didn't just solve an equation. He solved the myth that only certain people are born to shine. And that, more than any mathematical proof, was the real miracle.